She walked through the gates of Phoenix Echo training camp, with her head low and her steps steady. The desert sun was burning hot above, and the dust rose under her boots with every move. She was a simple woman at first glance. Quiet, small, and not the kind who drew attention, yet the truth about her was something nobody in that camp could even imagine. And that truth was written not on paper or in files, but inked deep on her skin hidden under her jacket. The camp was loud, full of strong voices and confident laughs, men and women who thought they were the best, ex-soldiers, athletes, and scholars. They all wanted to prove themselves. They carried medals, stories, and records. They spoke about their strength as if the whole desert needed to know. But when Sarah Mitchell entered, silence fell for a moment. Then came the mocking whispers, and finally the cruel jokes that cut. Like knives, Rick, a tall former Marine with a sharp buzz cut, spotted her right away, his smirk wide and mean. He flicked his fingers against the brim of her cap and sneered, asking who let you in here, his voice loud enough for others to laugh. A few joined in, calling her Yoga Girl, a lost rookie, maybe the daughter of some senator who got a free pass. Sarah kept her eyes down. She said nothing. She only kept walking, her shoulders tight but her pace calm. Her silence confused them, for they were used to fear or anger, not calmness. Inside the camp field, the air smelled of sweat and gun oil. The trainers barked orders, the hills echoed with rifle shots, and dust clung to every uniform. Sarah blended into the background with her plain dark shirt and simple gear, but blending in did not protect her. She was already marked as weak in their eyes. Her boots were scuffed yet clean, her hair tied tight, her build lean, not large or muscular. And for this they laughed louder, pushing her into the role of an outsider. The humiliation reached its sharpest point during the morning identity check. One by one, the candidates stepped forward, sharing their history and their records. Military tours, Ivy League schools, high rank in sports. When her turn came, she stood quiet. She gave only her name, nothing more. The trainer narrowed his eyes, asked for her background. She refused, her voice steady, her reasons private. The murmurs spread through the line. Rick shouted again, "She is hiding something! Make her prove she belongs!" His words carried weight because he was loud and bold, and the trainer allowed it. They told her to remove her jacket, right there in the middle of the field under the open sky. A hush fell. Everyone leaned closer, waiting for her to stumble, waiting for her shame. Sarah did not move at first, her gaze steady, then slowly her hands rose to the zipper. The sound was sharp against the silence. Zip by zip, the jacket came open. She slid it off her shoulders, the cloth falling to the ground. She turned her back, toward them. And in that moment, the camp forgot how to breathe. Across her skin was a tattoo, not a decoration, but a mark of fear and respect. A black hawk in mid-flight, wings spread wide, its claws gripping a sniper scope wrapped like a crown. Of steel. The ink was dark and alive under the blazing sun, the design too precise, too sharp to be random. Whispers filled the air. Some candidates gasped, others froze with eyes wide, and even the trainer stopped writing on his clipboard. From the far side of the field, a decorated general stepped forward, his boots heavy on the dirt, his uniform sharp, medals shining on his chest, his eyes fixed on the mark. He did not scold her. He did not question her. Instead, he removed his cap, his hand steady as he lifted it away. Then he gave her a salute, his voice low and rough with memory. "Ghost Viper once saved my life. Are you his student?" he asked. The words carried like thunder across the field. Sarah did not answer. She stood, still, her lean frame steady, her face calm. Her silence was an answer in itself. The general lowered his head with respect. The other candidates looked at her with disbelief. Their mocking laughter died in their throats. Rick clenched his jaw, the smirk gone, his eyes full of something darker. Maybe anger, maybe fear, maybe both, and the trainer's hands shook as he tried to hold his clipboard, unable to hide his surprise. The desert sun pressed down on them all. The heat was harsh, but the silence was harsher. What had been humiliation only moments before had become awe, and in that shift, Sarah's journey at Phoenix Echo truly began. No one there would forget the tattoo. No one there would forget the salute. And no one there would look at the simple, quiet woman the same way again, because the secret she carried on her back was more powerful than any words she could ever say. The camp did not rest after the tattoo was revealed. Whispers followed Sarah wherever she walked. Some spoke in awe, some in doubt, some in anger. The mark on her back had shaken them, but it had not erased the cruelty in their hearts, for pride and jealousy are strong enemies, and the louder voices were not ready to let her be. At the lunch tent, the air was thick with chatter. Metal trays clattered against the wooden tables, and the smell of beans and rice mixed with dust and sweat. Sarah sat alone at the far corner, her cap low, her fork moving slowly as she ate. She did not look at anyone. She did not join the noise. She carried herself in silence, and her silence only made them hungrier to break. Her Rick was the first to strike again, tall and broad, his marine posture giving him the false belief that he owned the space. He swaggered toward her with his crew behind him, Derek, the ex-cop. With his broken tooth and laugh like a hyena, Kyle, the smooth-haired tech man with his fake tan and sharp tongue, they circled her like wolves, their shadows falling across her tray. Yo yoga girl, Rick called, his voice loud enough to silence the tent. You wander into the wrong camp. His words dripped with scorn. Those skinny arms could not hold a rifle. Derek leaned in, his grin sharp. Check her boots, dollar store, maybe from her grandma. The laughter spread sharp and mean. The crowd fed on the cruelty like fire, fed on dry grass. Sarah's hand paused. On her fork for a moment, a tiny tremor in her fingers. But then she lifted her head, her eyes calm, steady, not angry, not afraid. She looked at Rick and said in a voice low and clear, "You done?" The tent froze. Silence thick as stone. Rick's smirk faltered for the first time. His pride cracked. He laughed, but the sound was hollow. Whatever he muttered as he stepped back could not hide the sting. His crew followed, but the mood had shifted. The crowd had seen something, not anger, not weakness, but steel hidden under quiet skin. Sarah lowered her gaze and finished her rice like nothing had happened. The afternoon brought the fitness test. The desert sun burned hot, the ground dry and hard. The lead trainer, Davis, a wiry man with lines etched deep in his face, barked the order. 60 pull-ups, perfect form, no cheating, prove you belong. The candidates groaned. Some rolled their eyes, others laughed nervously, but all stepped up. One by one they tried, their arms trembling, sweat rolling down their faces. Most failed at 20. A few women struggled to reach 10. Rick pushed harder, his face red, veins bulging, his body jerking as he fought through 32. He dropped down, chest heaving, a wide grin stretching his lips. His buddies cheered, slapping his back like he had won a medal. Then Sarah stepped forward, quiet, unnoticed. The plain girl with plain boots. She gripped the bar, her eyes fixed, straight ahead, her body still. The crowd turned away at first, uninterested, but then she began 1, 2, 10, 20. Her movement smooth as clockwork, her breath calm, no sway in her frame, no rush in her rhythm. By 30 heads turned, by 40. The laughter died. By 50 the silence thickened. At 60 she dropped down lightly, her boots landing firm on the dirt, her breathing even, her eyes calm, her shoulders steady. The trainer Davis stared, his clipboard forgotten in his hand, his voice low, almost to himself. Even special ops cannot always do that. His words carried across the field, and the shock rippled like a wave. Rick's grin vanished. He kicked the dirt, his jaw clenched. His pride shattered. The others whispered, disbelief mixing with fear and awe. Sarah simply adjusted her cap, brushed dust off her hands, and walked back to her place without a single word. That night the barracks were restless, the air heavy with the smell of sweat and canvas, the hum of insects filling the silence. Sarah lay on her cot, her bag tucked under her pillow, as she shifted an old photo slipped out, faded and worn. It showed her in desert camo beside a shadowed figure, a man whose face could not be seen, only a dark outline against a burning sky. Her thumb brushed the edge of the photo, her eyes soft for a moment. Then she slid it back into her bag, quick and careful, sealing away the memory like a wound hidden under bandages. Across the room, Rick sat on his cot, his head in his hands. His crew kept their distance, his silence louder than his laughter had ever been. His pride had been cut open, and what lived under it was darker than anyone wanted to admit. He stared at the floor with eyes hard and burning, the air around him, heavy with something dangerous, like a fuse lit and waiting to explode. The camp had seen her strength. The pull-ups had silenced the jokes for a moment, but silence never lasts in a place full of envy. And in the quiet of that night, the storm around Sarah Mitchell was only beginning to gather. Morning came heavy with heat. The desert air pressed down on every breath. The training field buzzed with voices, the clink of gear, the bark of orders. But under it all was a sharp tension. Rick had not spoken much since the pull-ups. His pride had been cut and the wound was still open. And when pride mixes with anger, it can turn into something darker, something that waits for the right chance to strike. During a break in the hand-to-hand drills, the chance came. The candidates stretched, laughed, and sparred in pairs. But Rick walked straight toward Sarah, his shoulders tight, his fists curled, his eyes locked on her, his voice low and sharp like a blade dragged across stone. "You think that tattoo makes you tough?" he asked. "I have seen real combat. I have bled for it. You are just a story." Sarah was tying her bootlace, her fingers calm and steady. She did not answer. Her silence was sharper than words, but Rick raised his voice so the whole field could hear. "Prove it," he shouted. "Grappling match. Real contact. No dodging the first hit. You take it like a soldier." His challenge spread like fire. Candidates stopped what they were doing, forming a wide circle, their eyes bright with curiosity and hunger for drama. Lena whispered to Tara, "He wants to humiliate her." But Sarah stood, brushing dirt from her hands. She looked at Rick, her face calm, her eyes steady like quiet steel. "I accept," she said. "You go first." The words were soft, but the weight of them pulled the air tight. The circle closed in, boots scuffing the dirt. Davis, the trainer, folded his arms, his expression unreadable, but his silence was permission enough. Rick did not wait. He lunged forward, his fist swinging heavy toward her shoulder. The hit landed hard. The sound cracked like leather struck against stone. The crowd gasped. Sarah's body shifted only a little. Her eyes never moved. She absorbed it like stone. Absorbs rain. Then she moved. One step, a pivot, a grip on his arm and shoulder. Her motion fluid, controlled, brutal in its simplicity. With a swift pull and turn, she sent Rick crashing to the ground. The air knocked out of him, his gasp echoing in the silence. It took only 8 seconds. The circle froze. No one spoke. The dust rose around his body as he struggled for breath. Then slowly the silence cracked with clapping, first soft, then louder. Candidates unsure if they were allowed, but unable to hold it back. Lena smiled, shaking her head in disbelief, her eyes bright. Rick lay on the ground, red-faced, his pride broken, his breath ragged. He had no words left. Sarah stepped back, her breathing calm, her hands loose at her sides. She did not smile. She did not boast. She simply waited until Rick pulled himself up, his eyes burning, his silence darker than before. That night the barracks were heavy with whispers. Some praised her, some feared her, others kept their distance. The story of the fight spread fast. Derek muttered to Kyle that maybe she was more dangerous than they thought. Kyle scoffed, but his eyes betrayed unease. Sarah lay on her cot, her bag under her pillow, her gaze on the ceiling. The memory of her mentor flickered in her mind. A voice from the past, "Breathe, Sarah. The shot is yours." She closed her eyes, the echo of that voice a shield against the storm around her. Rick sat alone in the corner, his hands clasped tight, his jaw grinding. His crew did not gather near him now. They whispered among themselves but left him in his dark silence. Pride once broken does not heal easy, and the anger inside him grew like fire fed by the night air. He would not let her victory stand. His mind was already turning, searching for another way to break her. The next day, training pressed on. Navigation drills across the hills under the punishing sun. Candidates paired off with compasses and maps. Sarah was paired with Kyle. He rolled his eyes and muttered loud enough for all to hear. Great, stuck with the mute. His arrogance carried like smoke. But she did not answer. She walked steady, her eyes scanning the land, her boots sure. When Kyle stumbled on a rock and dropped the map, Sarah caught it before the wind could take it. She handed it back, his face flushed. "I did not need your help," he snapped, his voice cracked with shame. She kept walking without reply, her shadow long against the morning light. By evening, the tension had grown. The trainers announced a personal. Introduction. Session. Each candidate was to stand and share their story, their name, their purpose. The circle of chairs in the stuffy briefing room felt tight, the air heavy. One by one they spoke. Rick loud and proud of his marine tours. Kyle, puffed up about his tech work. Lena short and sincere about her crisis training. Then Sarah's turn came. She stood, her uniform dusty but neat, her hands relaxed, her voice steady. Sarah Mitchell. "I am here for the training." She sat, nothing more. The silence stretched. Kyle leaned forward, smirking. "That is it, you shy." Rick jumped in, or hiding something. "You a spy?" The laughter was nervous now, close to cruel. Davis crossed his arms, his face cold. "Protocol says you may share or keep it brief." Rick pressed harder. "If she is not fake, let her prove it. Take off the jacket again. Show us." The room froze. Lena whispered, "This is wrong." Tara shifted in her chair, but nobody stopped it. Sarah looked at Davis, then at Rick, her gaze steady. Slowly she rose. The zipper of her jacket sang sharp against the silence. She slipped it off, turned her back. The Black Hawk tattoo stretched across her shoulder blades, fierce and alive. The room gasped. The whispers rose. "Ghost Viper's mark," someone said. "Impossible," said another. The truth was out again, heavier than before, and the camp would never be the same. Rick's face drained, his fists clenched, his pride shattered a second time, and Sarah stood calm, silent, untouchable, the secret on her skin louder than any voice in the room. The briefing room had fallen into silence after the tattoo was revealed. Every eye locked on the Black Hawk and the sniper scope etched across Sarah's back. The whispers of Ghost Viper's name filled the air like smoke. "Impossible," they said. "No way," they murmured. Yet the mark was there, clear and undeniable, and Sarah did not speak. She simply pulled her jacket back on, sat down, and folded her hands in silence, her calmness heavier than any words could ever be. The session ended early. The trainers dismissed the candidates with stiff voices, but the room buzzed with unspoken fear. Rick's jaw was tight, his fists white as stone. Kyle muttered to Derek, though his smirk was weaker now. Lena watched Sarah with eyes that held respect. Tara looked troubled. The balance of the camp had shifted, and everyone knew it. That night under the desert sky, the camp was restless. Sarah sat outside the barracks. With her boots crossed at the ankles, the cool night wind brushing her face, she pulled a photo from her bag. The same old, faded picture of her standing in desert camo beside a man hidden in shadow. Her thumb traced the outline of his figure. The voice of memory echoed again. "Breathe, Sarah. The shot is yours." She slipped the photo back quickly, sealing. The memory before it could spill too deep, her gaze lifted to the stars. Steady, calm. but her silence carried 1,000 untold truths. Across the yard, Rick sat on a bench, his shoulders bent forward, his head in his hands. His buddies whispered nearby but gave him space. His silence was not surrender, it was something darker, a storm building, his pride crushed, his anger raw, and anger left unchecked is a dangerous thing. His eyes lifted once toward Sarah across the shadows, burning with something heavy, then lowered again, his fists closing tight. The next morning, the camp lined up on the dusty field, the sun already hot. The trainers barked orders, but Davis, the lead trainer, carried unease, his voice sharp but his eyes avoiding Sarah. Her presence unsettled him. The truth unsettled him. He filed a report that night, speaking into the radio, his tone stiff. She lacks transparent records. She is a risk. His words carried not respect but fear of losing control. The camp was changing, and he did not like it. Later that day, the general returned, his boots crunching against the gravel, his uniform crisp, the medals on his chest shining like fire in the sun. He called Sarah into the command office, a stark room with bare walls, and a single desk. He looked at her with searching eyes. "Ghost Viper saved my life," he said, "took a bullet for me. If you are his student, then I owe you respect." He removed his cap slowly and saluted her, his hand steady, his voice rough with memory. "I will personally appoint you to the High Tactical Command Unit." Sarah bowed her head only slightly, her silence a quiet acceptance. The general did not press for more. He knew truth does not need explanation by. After noon, the camp was called into formation. The air hot and dry, the candidates stood in lines. Davis stepped forward with a paper in hand, his voice flat. "Conduct unbecoming will not be tolerated." Rick Callahan, he called, the Marine who had mocked Sarah, the one who had challenged her. His name rang across the field. He was expelled, effective immediately. Rick stepped out pale-faced, his duffel bag at his feet, his boots dragging as he walked away. The others watched in silence. No one spoke. No one dared. Sarah stood in the back row, her cap low, her hands in her pockets. She did not watch him go. She did not need to. The days that followed were different. Sarah was no longer a shadow at the edge of the crowd. She was appointed as an instructor, her task to teach sniper tactics to the very candidates who had mocked her. They now sat in her classes with notebooks open, their eyes sharp, their pencils scratching fast. Her lessons were calm and precise. She demonstrated the rifle with steady hands. She spoke of breath control, wind direction, patience. "The shot is not about force," she said. "It is about waiting, knowing the moment." Her words sank deep and even. The loudest of them leaned forward to listen. Lena lingered after one class, helping Sarah pack the gear, her voice soft, her smile genuine. "You are not what I expected," she said. Sarah glanced at her, lips twitching in the faintest smile. "Most people are not," she replied, swinging the rifle case onto her shoulder. Tara watched, too, her eyes thoughtful. Respect slowly replacing doubt. And for the first time, Sarah felt the camp shift towards something lighter, if only for a moment. "But envy does not die easy," Kyle whispered behind closed doors. Derek frowned. In corners, and small signs appeared. A crude drawing slipped into Sarah's bag. A hawk crossed with red ink. A warning, a threat. She crumpled it and burned it in the fire pit, her face calm, her jaw tight. Lena saw the flames and asked if she was all right. Sarah nodded. "Just noise," she said. But her hand lingered over her bag, where the old photo was hidden. The shadow of her mentor, never far. The truth of the tattoo had changed everything. It had brought her respect. It had brought her enemies. It had forced Rick out. It had placed her under a new light. But the storm around her had not ended. The camp was only halfway through, and the deeper tests were yet to come. Sarah knew it. The trainers knew it. And somewhere in the silence of the desert night, Ghost Viper's memory seemed to whisper again, Stay sharp, Sarah. They will come for you. The final week of training brought new tests. The desert sun rose higher each day, the drills grew harder, and the candidates felt the weight of exhaustion. But for Sarah, the challenge was not the heat or the long hours. It was the eyes that followed her wherever she went, some with respect, some with envy, some with fear. The truth of her tattoo had spread like fire, and once fire starts, it cannot be controlled. One morning, the candidates were divided into teams for a major simulation, a mock urban rescue. They had to move through buildings, recover a hostage, and exfil under fire. Sarah was not on a team. She was placed as an overseer, her role to watch from the rooftop and guide by radio, her binoculars steady, her voice calm, her words clipped and clear. Slow down, Weston. Check your 6, she advised. But Kyle, the tech man, ignored her, his ego louder than her instructions. He charged ahead, barking orders at his teammates. Within minutes, half his squad was marked out by paint rounds snipers hidden in windows had taken them easily. Kyle stormed back, red-faced. Paint splattered on his gear, his voice loud. "You set us up," he accused, his eyes wild. Sarah lowered her binoculars, her gaze calm. "You did not listen," she said. Nothing more. Kyle opened his mouth, then closed it, his pride choking his reply. Lena's team, however, moved like shadows, slow, patient, deliberate. She had listened. She had learned. She trusted her. Squad. They reached the hostage, covered their angles, and slipped out with perfect timing. Sarah watched from above, her lips twitching into a faint half-smile. When Lena glanced up at her position and gave a quick nod, Sarah nodded back. It was a silent bond, forged not by words but by trust. That evening in the debrief room, Davis spoke stiffly, his praise for Lena grudging, his eyes still avoiding Sarah. But the other trainers were less cold. One with scarred knuckles pulled Sarah aside, his voice low and rough. "You are making them better. Do not let Davis tell you different." Sarah only nodded, her hands deep in her pockets. "Just doing my job," she said. But the weight of his words stayed with her. The nights were not peaceful. In the shadows of the barracks, Sarah found warnings. A crude drawing of the Black Hawk with a red cross slipped into her gear, whispers of Kyle and Derek plotting in corners. Tara noticed the tension and offered her water one night. Asking softly if she was all right, Sarah accepted the bottle with quiet thanks, her voice calm, but her eyes carrying the burden of memory, the photo of her mentor still hidden in her bag, the voice of Ghost Viper still echoing in her mind. "They will come for you, Sarah. Stay sharp." The last day of camp came with cool air and long shadows across the ground. The candidates lined up at the gate,